Hey everyone, Mr. MC here, back with another Gran Turismo 7 racing video where we're taking a look at the recent Nations Cup race which took place at Suzuka circuit with quite possibly one of the most difficult cars to drive, the Gran Turismo F3500A. So let's not waste any more time and jump right into the qualifying session, where the qualifying session is 18 minutes long. So it's a pretty long qualifying session. It's almost as long as the race itself, but we're definitely going to need all those 18 minutes to try to get the best possible qualifying time and hopefully not bin it about 100,000 times in the process. And this is round 3 of the Nations Cup, and it's one of the more unique rounds as some of the rounds use the X2019, others use Group 3 cars, one used the Lamborghini Aventador, and then there's this round with the F3500A. And you have to be so careful with your throttle input because just like that, just using just a little too much throttle on your corner exit and you're going to be spinning out. And unfortunately I was not able to get a qualifying time in just yet, so I had to go back to the pit stop, refresh the car, and try again. And again, luckily with this long qualifying session, I definitely need as much time as possible to try to get a decent lap in. And right away, about 10 minutes in, I'm going to get a 133.691, which unfortunately puts me at P11 as this was top split in slot 1 here in the North American region. But currently on my way to improve my lap time and hopefully move up a couple spots. Just got to be really careful through the final turn, as it is possible to spin out here, as that's how dangerous this car is. The car even stepped out just a little bit right there and it can get a 133.691, so the consistency is there. The time, unfortunately, that's a whole different story. But yeah, I'm gonna see if I could try to improve my lap time just by a bit more, as I'm now down to 12 plays. But it's gonna be right here where unfortunately, yeah, the car is just gonna spin out, as that's how difficult it is to drive this car. And even with traction control, you're still prone to spinning out. But luckily I was able to improve my lap time and move up to 8th place. And the goal here is to try to finish hopefully 6th place or above to get close to 300 points or get more than 300 points. But there's going to be a bit of fighting to do, a bit of surviving to do. And let's go to the race itself, where it is a great start. Going to use traction control to start in the second gear, and the lights go off, and going to be able to fly off the line, already gaining a spot before we even approach turn number 1. And it's going to try to be really careful through here. Voidsy almost goes off the track, but luckily he's able to stay within the track limits, and just going to try to slot myself in. However, I'm already getting a bit of pressure from Maximus right behind me, and to be honest, I was not feeling confident here, as I haven't been able to get that much practice in for all these Nations Cup races. So yeah, so I'm trying to be really careful to here, but unfortunately for Degner 2, gonna go just a little bit wide, and that's gonna give Maximus the opportunity to pass me. Lester is even gonna go for the move, and just like that, I'm going to fall down to 9th place. We do bunch up a bit right there, but luckily we're all able to just survive. Although I did pick up front damage, which is gonna make my life a little difficult for now, as I'm gonna have a hard time going through some of these turns, as I now have quite a bit of understeer. It's going to try to be really careful here. It's trying to be really careful getting back on the throttle. Luckily, Forza is going to be very nice and give me just a tiny little bump, only to betray me right there. And he's going to try to go for the move, going into 130R, but I'm just going to let him have it, as going too wide through 130R is probably not going to be the wisest thing to do with a really fast and dangerous car like the F3500A. And surprisingly, people are on their best behavior for this race, as we're all just trying to survive here, so no one's trying to be way too pushy, and no one has spun out just yet, until later on into lap 3, where unfortunately there is going to be a casualty right there, where someone spun out just before Degner 1, and I think that was Wheaties, which that's going to be some incredibly bad luck for him. And to be quite honest, this race was extremely uneventful, where I was hanging out behind Forza and Maximus. Lester was hanging out right behind me, and we couldn't really make any moves on each other. I did try to go for this move right here, but yeah, it was definitely not going to work. And at that point, might as well just try to carefully make your way to the finish line, finish the race, and just take home P8. So started in P8, finished in P8, but most importantly, I was able to somehow finish this race in one piece, which honestly, for a car that's really difficult to drive, is a bit of a victory in itself. Now, I did get 265 points, unfortunately not 300, so I was getting ready to kind of just call it a day because I'm not a big fan of this car until, unfortunately, Uncle Lester told me to do a rematch. And because it's Uncle Lester, I ended up saying okay and instantly regretted my decision. But onto slot number 2 we go, where surprisingly for slot number 2, there's still some points on offer, so it is still possible to get a pretty good result. Main goal here is to try to finish top 4, which might be a bit of a tall order because there are still some fast people in this lobby, like Wheaties, Lester, Grove Street, and so on. So on to the 18-minute session, or qualifying session we go, where I should be a bit more warmed up compared to slot number 1, so it should be a little easier for me to try to get a faster time. Maybe, hopefully, poke into the 132s. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you my fastest lap. So current fastest lap is a 132.175. And gonna look for the end of the curb on the right, gonna brake before it ends, down to second gear for more rotation, back up to fourth gear, and be really careful getting back on the throttle. Lift off our throttle, use a tiny bit of braking for this right turn, lift off our throttle again, just be really careful with your throttle input. Gotta slow down for this right turn and set yourself up for this quick left turn. It is possible to carry a lot more speed on fourth gear, but it does bring the risk of spinning out. Quick braking for the 2 Degners, back up to third gear, getting a bit aggressive on the throttle right there. Gonna brake before the curb on the right ends for the hairpin, down to first gear for more rotation, exit on third gear, and you want to try to be as aggressive as possible, getting back on the throttle so you can get a really fast exit. Take a short deep breath, bring yourself towards the right, brake before the path on the right, down to fourth gear, brake before the curb on the right ends, down to second gear for more rotation, exit on fourth gear. Got to be really careful with your throttle input, even on fourth gear, as you could spin out if you're a little too aggressive with your throttle input. 130R is the easiest turn. It is a flat out turn, just don't hit the curb on the left. Got to be really careful with that. Brake just after the 150 meter board, down to first gear for more rotation, exit on third gear. Take a wide line to make sure you don't spin out. Short shift up to fourth gear, bring yourself in, and with that, getting a 153.156, which put me into second at the time, but I'm going to get passed by B-Thumb, so he's going to push me down to third place. Now, luckily, I was able to squeeze in just one more qualifying lap just before the first timer hits 0. So gonna see if I can try to poke into the 132s. Gonna try to carry as much speed through the first turns, down to second gear, exit on fourth gear, be a bit aggressive on the throttle, but unfortunately the car is going to spin out, and that ends my qualifying session. But still, starting in third place, now it's time to focus. Traction control at 2, second gear, handbrake, and go ahead and let go of the handbrake as the lights go off. And you're going to try to be really careful through these first couple of turns, as everyone's going to barrel on into the first turn. Lester right behind is going to be able to sneak right through and going to bring me down to fourth place. Tinsley is attacking me, but luckily he does back out of it. So I'm going to just fall down to fourth place compared to third place at the start of the race. And now here it's just trying to be nice and careful as the tires warm up, and just try not to push too much, especially in the first couple of laps, or just the first lap. Degner 1, got to be a bit careful. It's a bit easy to cut a bit too much into the turn and grab yourself a track penalty. Luckily, I did not poke too deep into the track limits. And then just going to brake before the curb on the right ends for the hairpin. Just try to be a bit careful, as I want to make sure I don't run into Lester. Now, I don't mind sitting here in 4th place, because all I want to do is just survive this race, and if I can somehow finish in 4th place, I'll be pretty happy with that, because I think it's just under 300 points, so I'm not too much in a rush. I'm just going to sit back and just try to have a nice little drive. However, B-Thumb and Wheaties are already starting to break away from the rest of us. However, they're going to fight it out at 130R, and they're going to collide, and unfortunately, Wheaties is going to end up in the wall. B-Thumb somehow survives the incident, but it's going to come at a huge cost of a 5-second penalty. So we definitely have to take a look at what the heck happened here. So in B-Thumb's perspective, he does go for an outside move into 130R. They are going to collide, and the turf is going to make B-Thumb lose control, but somehow the collision ends up saving him, and yeah, he ends up getting a 5-second penalty. So going into Wheaties' perspective, they do collide. B-Thumb loses it, but the collision from Wheaties ends up correcting B-Thumb, and that's what ends up saving his race, or well, almost saving his race if he didn't get the penalty. But he does have a 5-second penalty hanging over his head, and he has to serve that on the back straight. Now, I was in shock because I just saw that all go down in front of me, and I was just having a hard time trying to process like what the heck just happened, because that was a pretty brutal collision right there, especially on Wheaties' end. So gonna fast forward through this, where B-Thumb is hanging out right behind Lester, and he does try to go for a move at the hairpin, but nothing comes out from that. And we are getting close to the penalty serving zone, so B-Thumb does have to serve his penalty soon. He does go for a move on Lester right there, but it's all gonna be for naught, as almost stopped that right there. Luckily he saved it, but Tinsley's gonna take advantage and pass me. B-Thumb serves a penalty, and he's going to fall way back. Forza's trying to go for the move, but we're going to go into 130R together, but luckily Forza backs out of it at the very last moment, goes into the back of me, and somehow we all managed to somehow survive that. And I don't even know how I didn't get damaged, but somehow still staying in 3rd place, somehow still surviving. And I'm just trying to have a nice little drive, just trying not to push the car too much. Almost go off of the turf right there. That could have been really bad, but somehow managed to stay on the track. But yeah, but I'm just trying to vibe here. I'm just trying to have a shenanigan-free race, because this car is already full of its own shenanigans that I'm trying not to provoke. But unfortunately for Tinsley, his car is going to provoke some shenanigans, and he's going to step out, but I have nowhere to go. Going to the side of Tinsley, and Tinsley ends up going into the wall, and I somehow managed to escape without a penalty. But looking at the bottom right hand corner of the screen, someone is in the grass where they shouldn't be, and I didn't realize this at the time because I was focused on what was going on in front of me. All hell broke loose behind me. So let's take a look at Tinsley's perspective, where his car just steps out just a little bit, but it was just enough for the car to lose control, and I had nowhere to go. And he gets shunted by the Mexican driver, ends up in the wall, and that just sets off a whole chain of events where, if we look at Forza's perspective, Tinsley doesn't get ghosted, so Forza goes into the back of him. But unfortunately for Forza, he's going to go off track, push the other Mexican driver, get pushed by another Mexican driver, and just have his race completely ruined, and ends up leaving the race, which I don't blame him. Now taking a look at Campos' perspective, where Forza should have been ghosted, but PD just did not ghost him, gets pushed onto the grass, but actually manages to save it. And he did lose some spots, but better than ending up in the wall. Now taking a look at B-Thumb, where he does take advantage of this situation and pulls a pretty aggressive maneuver on Mike, and unfortunately for Mike, he ends up in the gravel and loses a lot of time right there. And the luckiest son of gun is going to go to Quackadilly, where he is far back enough to where the ghosting system is actually doing his job now, picks up one position, picks up 2, 3 more spots and picks up a 4th spot, jumping from 8th to 4th place all in a span of a few seconds. And actually, he's under attack from the Mexican, but he is luckily able to keep 4th place. And all that happened right behind me, and I had no idea that happened until I looked at the replays. So now up into 2nd place, so things are looking great. All I need to do is just make sure that I don't do anything stupid and just hope that this race ends up being completely boring. Unfortunately, the boring part is not going to happen, as Grove is going to be right behind me. He's going to take advantage of my slipstream, and he's going to go for the move. And going into 130R, going too wide is definitely a death sentence, so I back out of it. Yeah, definitely not going to gamble my chances now. And one thing to note is that Wheaties did fall back quite a bit after the lap 1 incident. He's in 7th place now. And he's going to improve quite a bit as we eventually get ready to jump into lap number 8. As for me, a whole bunch of nothing has been going on, but for Wheaties, he has been on an incredible recovery drive, as he is now 2 seconds away. And if he keeps improving at this point, he's definitely going to catch up and try to fight for the win. And if he catches up to me, honestly, I have no pace, so I'm going to let him pass. However, looking ahead, Grove and Lester are starting to fight it out into 130R, and unfortunately, Les is going to get the short end of the stick and end up in the wall. And it's just a repeat of what happened in lap number 1, where unfortunately a bit of collision happened. And if we take a look at Grove's perspective, he goes for the inside move, but he does push Lester into the turf, and unfortunately for Lester, that is going to send him spinning into the wall. So yes, a little push into the turf, loses control and ends up in the wall. And that's going to bring me back up to 2nd place once again. But the question is, how long will this last? Because Wheaties is still catching up, and with him being the fastest person in the lobby, it's not a question of if Wheaties is going to catch up, but when is Wheaties going to catch up? Because sure, he's only 2 seconds away, but the slipstream is strong, and he's the fastest person in the lobby, so Grove and I have to really step it up if we want to try to keep Wheaties at bay, which I don't know about that, Chief. I'm not the fastest person in the lobby. Speaking of which, yeah, Wheaties. Yeah, he's right behind me now. So up until lap 11, Wheaties has been able to catch up, so now it's a 3, actually it's even a 4-car battle, as if I remember correctly, Vlad is hanging out right behind Wheaties, so yeah, so they're going to try to definitely hound on me. They're going to try to hound on Grove, although Grove is just a little bit further up, so he has a tiny bit of breathing space. But Wheaties is hanging out right behind me, and I'm just trying my best to keep up. But unfortunately for Wheaties, he's going to go wide and spin out. And, you know, poor Wheaties, his luck ended up running out on him again. And, yeah, Dagner 2 is a really dangerous turn. Really easy to go wide and then touch the turf and spin out just like that. And it's really unfortunate because Wheaties had an incredible recovery drive only for it to be ruined at the penultimate lap. So now it's just Grove and I, where in a way we're fighting out for 1st place, but at the same time I'm just trying to survive because we're so close to the end of the race. And yeah, I've been really lucky in this race so far, where I was able to avoid getting penalties. I was able to avoid getting sent into the wall, especially in the earlier laps, and just watching cars just drop left, right, behind, and I'm somehow still in the running for the win. And it's going to be really careful through the final corners, as it's really easy for the car to spin out over here. And unfortunately for Grove, he's going to spin out. And just like that, at the start of lap 12, the final lap, I am in 1st place. And at this point, I am terrified because I cannot mess this up. I have been gifted 1st place, and I just need to make sure that the car doesn't do anything stupid, especially because it's so hard for this car to recover if it starts to step out quite a bit. And I am so scared that I'm going a lot slower, already going more than half of a second down on the first sector alone. And just trying to be really careful here. Really easy to mess it up, and almost a second slower now. And Vlad is catching up, so if I keep going this slow, he's definitely going to catch up and try to find me for the win. So I have to speed it up just a little bit, but I'm still so terrified of beating it that I'm still going really slow through these turns, and yeah, going on a much higher gear than I really should be. I should have been on 4th or 3rd gear in spoon, not 5th gear, and I'm going really slow to the point where I am more than 1 second slower than my best lap. And luckily the end is in sight, and I just have to be super careful through these final turns. Gonna aggressively shift up, go in a much higher gear, nurse the car home, and take home the win. And I was just losing my mind. I was speechless when I did this race, as I didn't expect for all that to go down and somehow survive the race and pick up a win. And I mean, yeah, just thinking about it now, I'm still at a bit of a loss of words, but I was able to take home the victory. Survive all the shenanigans, especially from slot 2. But the best thing of all, I was able to take home 333 points, and I think that's probably the most points I've ever won in a GTWS race in Gran Turismo 7. So yeah, that was a hell of a race, a terrifying race, probably the scariest race I've ever done. And luckily I was able to survive it twice to tell the tale. But yeah, yeah, this race was just wow. Yeah, this race was terrifying and it was chaotic as hell. But that is going to be the end of this video. Please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more silly videos like this, because I have more videos coming up from the other rounds in the GTWS series. But that's all from me. So take care, everyone. And this is Mr. CA, the world's most okay player, and I'll see you in the next video.